We're moving back to my parents' house next month." When my husband Ben made this announcement to his sister-in-law Holly, she seemed ecstatic. Her reaction took both Ben and me by surprise. On the day of the move, I received a barrage of phone calls once I finished unpacking. "Your new address is?" Holly had made a mistake without hearing out the story and was subsequently plunged into despair. "My name is Jane, 35 years old. Just a regular office worker. I live with my husband Ben and our child who is in the 4th grade. We both work to support our life and have a great relationship as a family. Our life was smooth sailing. One day, Holly came to visit. At first, she had politely said that she just came over to hang out, so we warmly welcomed her. However, she started coming over every few days without a call, and her attitude gradually became more arrogant. Holly knew I finished my work on time. She'd time her visits accordingly, making herself comfortable and helping herself to food and drink. At her worst, she even ate the kids' snacks. I tried advising Holly about her actions, but she wouldn't listen. Instead, she'd become outraged and impossible to handle. Recently, she had been coming over every day. Ben and I were constantly worrying about how we could stop her from visiting. "Hey, you didn't buy anything today, even though you knew I was coming?" I could almost hear myself sigh in response to her. I almost let out a sigh at her acting so. "I didn't buy anything. If you want something to eat, please buy it yourself." As soon as I spoke these words, Holly began to yell at a deafening pitch. "Don't mess with me, I'm a guest. You should treat me. Besides, this is your house, isn't it? It's common sense for you to pay for everything." She would shout these words at the top of her lungs, thinking that becoming aggressive will get her way. She was an incredibly selfish and troublesome person. "Holly, we didn't receive any call about you coming. Isn't it common sense to call before coming if you want to be treated?" At this, Holly quivered her shoulders and spilled the tea she was holding. "How dare you? You're my sister-in-law. Are you entitled to behave this way? I'll spread bad rumors about you to all our relatives." Despite being the one causing the inconvenience, she could still muster such audacity. I know Holly wasn't like this before. The first time I went to my in-laws' house to say hello, she was living there with her husband, Ken. When I was nervously greeting them, they both chatted with me in a friendly manner. Thanks to them, I could relax and talk, got warmly welcomed by my in-laws, and successfully married Ben. But when I met her after a long time, she was a different person. Even when I asked her if something happened at her in-laws, Holly refused to answer. At first, I thought I could support her, but as she started visiting us daily and behaving without restraint, I became fed up. Gradually, I started behaving coldly towards her, which made her actions even more extreme. "I want a drink. Go buy it. Now!" Holly commanded me, who was cooking, to go outside as if she was chasing me out. My bag, which was in the living room, was thrown outside. Although I was agitated and wanted to decline while picking up my bag, Holly blocked the door and wouldn't let me in until I brought what she asked for. "Please stop it. My husband is going to be home soon. Our kid will be coming back from his friend's house soon." "I don't care. If you stop complaining and go right now, you should be back in time." Holly said that, standing in the doorway like a gatekeeper, determined not to let me into the house. I gave up arguing, as it would just waste time, and reluctantly went to the nearby supermarket to buy alcohol as Holly demanded. When I returned home, as expected, my kids were back, and my sister-in-law Holly was arrogantly making my child clean up the tea she had just spilled. I hastily rushed to my child and glared at Holly. "Please never do this again. It's your spilled tea, right? Clean up after yourself." When I assertively said this, Holly started drinking the wine she had grabbed from me and said, "It's your fault for being so slow." I instructed my child to take their stuff to their room and hurriedly finished the rest of the cleaning. As I was cooking, I was getting more and more annoyed, wondering if there was a way to stop Holly's outrageous behavior. I decided to consult with my husband, Ben, about Holly. He was as angry as I was about what Holly had done to our child. He said he would call his brother right away, but a few minutes later, Ben came back frowning. When I asked him what had happened, he looked at his cell phone with a puzzled expression. "I want to contact my brother, but for some reason, the call isn't going through." Upon hearing this, I tilted my head in confusion. We wondered what might be happening on their end and discussed visiting my in-laws, but neither of us could find a convenient date due to work. Although we were anxious, we decided to visit my in-laws on a date that suited us next month and ended the discussion. The next day, I told Holly that we were going to my in-laws' house, but she didn't give us any details, and for some reason, she vehemently objected to us going to my in-laws' house. "Don't come! I absolutely won't forgive you if you just come!" As Holly yelled, we became even more confused. Why didn't she want us to go to my in-laws' house? As I was thinking about all this, I had more bad news the next day. My mom called me to tell me that my dad had been injured. "Your father fell down the stairs. It's not serious, but he was told that he needs caregiving." My mother sighed, looking distraught. I was worried and offered to go home right away, but my mother insisted, "Don't worry about it. You have children, right? Put them first before us." With that, she hung up. My parents are both over 65 years old. Even though they're retired, they work in senior jobs to make a living. If my father is injured and needs caregiving, my mother will have to support him while working. Of course they won't be able to live as they used to. I wondered if there was anything I could do for them. I ended the day's work with a heavy heart and went home. That evening, Holly came to our house as usual after the children came back from school. "I'm hungry. Isn't dinner ready yet?" She was planning to have dinner at our place, as it was a normal thing to do. I looked at Holly with a bitter expression. I wanted to discuss my parents with Ben that night, but it would be difficult to do so with Holly there. "Could you please pass on dinner tonight? Instead, I bought a cake." When I offered the cake to Holly, she frowned and glared at me. "What do you mean? You expect me to fill up on cake? That's ridiculous." "We have our circumstances too. I'm sorry, but could you eat this and go home?" I said so, but Holly reluctantly looked at the cake. I tried saying, "If you don't want it, you don't have to eat it," but she ignored my words and ate two instead and went back home. After that, I consulted with Ben, who had returned home. He suggested that we should at least send money to my parents for their living expenses, but we can't afford to support my parents' lifestyle every month. Ben said he would do more overtime, but I didn't want him to do that either. At that moment, we came up with a great idea. A good way to solve the problem with my brother's wife and my parents' situation. Ben agreed with me, and we immediately started preparing. I called my parents while my husband, Ben, started packing our belongings. Then he made a call to Holly on her cell. "We're moving back to my parents' place next month. We won't be here when you visit." Holly seemed delighted at Ben's declaration. "Well, I should start preparing too." she remarked, seemingly not paying much attention to the conversation, and hung up the phone. We were left wondering what she needed to prepare for. Well, never mind. We concluded so and ended the conversation. On the day of moving, we arrived at my parents' home and started unpacking. Suddenly, we noticed a barrage of calls from Holly. I hurriedly answered the phone to find Holly sounding hysterical. After waiting for her to calm down, I asked what had happened, to which she replied in shock. "Your new place is..." I was confused and replied, "Huh? It's my parents' home. I said we were moving to our parents' house, right?" Holly's gasp could be heard over the phone. "Parents' home? Ben mentioned it, so I assumed you were moving here." Surprised, I immediately asked Ben, who was nearby playing with our child. Ben, seemingly oblivious, replied, "I clearly said our parents' home." "Did you explain it was my parents' home?" "I was cut off before I could explain. Anyway, it's not really a big deal, right? You also said, well, never mind." That's when I first realized there had been a huge misunderstanding. "I'm sorry, Holly, we didn't move to your parents' home. We've already finished moving. Ben tried to explain, but you hung up." As I explained, Holly started protesting angrily. "I didn't know. Explain properly. I assumed you were coming here. My plans are all messed up. What are you going to do about this?" And so Holly started to berate me. When I asked her about her plans, Holly revealed something astonishing. "I assumed you'd handle all the tedious house chores when you moved in with us." I was left speechless at her words. Ignoring Holly's derisive attitude, I explained why we chose to move. "We were having a hard time with your frequent visits, Holly. Around the same time, my mom told me that my dad got injured and needed care. When I discussed this with Ben, he suggested we move to my parents' home, as it would keep you away and we could help my mom." Upon hearing this, Holly could only say, "Huh?" in a threatening tone. My parents' home is conveniently located near our child's school, and it was also close to our workplaces, so the move went smoothly. It was like killing two birds with one stone. Although we had intended to explain this to Holly, she had hastily ended the call, so we didn't feel it was our fault. "Move here right now!" Holly demanded, raising her voice, but I flatly refused. While I didn't hate the idea of living with Holly's family, I couldn't stand the thought of being exploited. Besides, my parents are having a hard time right now. Even after explaining this, Holly wouldn't accept it. "So, you won't listen to me?" Suddenly, we heard Ben's brother's voice. Holly gasped and moved away from the phone. "Is everything okay, Holly?" As I asked this, Holly pleaded in a frantic voice. "Please, just come here now." "What do you mean?" "Just hurry." I wonder what on earth my sister-in-law is so anxious about. Overwhelmed by Holly's words, I was at a loss for words, and then she abruptly ended the call. After ending the call, I told my husband Ben about what my sister-in-law had said, and he let out a grunt. "We need to check it out, I guess," he said, offering to drive. In the midst of just having moved and being busy with various things, I informed my parents that we were going to my in-laws. Fortunately, both of my parents were at home, so they agreed to take care of the kids. Thanks to them, Ben and I could head to my in-laws together. Upon arriving at my in-laws, I immediately walked into the living room. There, I found Holly with a gloomy face, and my mother-in-law and brother-in-law with angry expressions. As soon as they noticed us, they offered us tea and explained the situation. "Actually, Holly ran away from home after we blamed her for her extravagant spending. We tried to contact her many times, but we couldn't get through. It's been tough," said my brother-in-law, glaring at Holly. I was shocked and opened my eyes wide upon hearing this. I hadn't even thought that Holly had run away from home. Ben was similarly stunned, looking at Holly in disbelief. Holly even used my savings! I called her several times to get my money back, but I couldn't reach her at all. Then she suddenly came back home today. I was surprised when I heard that you were moving in, but it seems that was a misunderstanding. Taken aback, I instinctively shook my head. Then Holly, who had been silent so far, raised her voice in protest. First of all, it's your fault, Mom, for meddling in my affairs. I spent the money to relieve the stress from you. It's not a big deal. Holly slammed her fist on the table with her face flushed. However, neither my mother-in-law nor brother-in-law backed down. Enough with your excuses. You quit your job out of the blue and decided to be a stay-at-home wife, but you didn't do any housework or cooking, did you? You dumped all the troublesome tasks on us. How can you be stressed out? That's right. You used all the living expenses that Mom and I earned on your designer bags. This is unacceptable. Something's wrong with you. Both my mother-in-law and brother-in-law raised their voices in anger with their faces flushed. Seeing their attitude, Holly, showing no remorse, looked away, not taking the situation seriously. We had no idea that things were like this at my in-laws. At this, my brother-in-law's voice grew louder. Enough is enough. It seems like you're also causing trouble for my younger brother, aren't you? If you're so dissatisfied, let's just get divorced. Don't ever interfere with us again. When my brother-in-law said that, Holly's face suddenly turned pale and she started to panic. Wait, why does it have to come to that? I was just trying to take care of you two. Hearing Holly's excuse, Ben and I sighed. It was us who took care of you. You came over every day, ate and drank whatever you wanted from our home, even had dinner, without paying for the groceries or lifting a finger to help me. When I said that, my brother-in-law glared at Holly with a sharp look. Well, that's because it's your house. I'm a guest, so why do I need to pay money? Holly spoke so selfishly that we were speechless. My brother-in-law, determined not to back down, pulled out divorce papers from the shelf. I've been struggling with this. Holly, I can't put up with you anymore. Sign these papers right now and leave. Don't ever come near this house or my younger brothers again. At my brother-in-law's intense spirit, Holly was taken aback. Also, you have to repay Mom's savings in full, okay? Let's discuss it properly through a lawyer. Upon hearing that, Holly was visibly shocked, her face turning pale. I wonder how much money she used. From her reaction, it seemed to be a considerable amount. I don't have that kind of money. Jane, you and Ben are both working, right? You should have some spare. Holly, flustered, turned to me for help. I shook my head side to side, looking at her. We just can't afford it. We have our parents' healthcare expenses, our kids' support payments, and our own living costs. You're going to have to figure this out yourself. At my words, Holly finally accepted and gave up. After that, as per her brother-in-law's declaration, Holly was required to fully repay her mother-in-law's money. She hired a lawyer and got it recorded in official documents, so there would be no escaping it. My husband and I were told about this by her brother-in-law, and he apologized again, saying, I'm sorry for involving you in this. We felt relieved as our lingering worries had been resolved. By the way, it seems like all the food and drink Holly had in our house was also added to the mother-in-law's claim. Since there's no detailed documentation or evidence, full repayment might not be possible, but he said some of it might be returned. My husband and I thanked my brother-in-law. Apparently, she had borrowed money to cover her expenses when she had run away, and now she's living on the edge due to that debt as well. Meanwhile, I'm spending my time helping my mom at my parents' home. I don't have to worry about Holly anymore, and most of my stress is gone. From now on, I'm determined to work hard to protect my beloved parents and family.